Welcome to theUpStreamLife.com. I'm Vishal Krishna, your host and co-founder. Of course, I want to talk about agriculture all the time. It's because my family comes from an agri background. I also have vested interest in agriculture simply because a lot of my cousins are still there. They all struggle with farming, and we all know farming is not easy in India. Farming is about price discovery. Farming is about understanding how distribution works. Farming is about supply chain, of course. Solving all that is, of course, Otipy. And I'm going to tell you about what Otipy does. Otipy was founded by Varun Khurana. The startup works with more than 20,000 community leaders and fulfills more than 15,000 orders across cities such as Delhi NCR region, Sonipat and Meerut. It is expanding across the country very soon. We'll see them in Bengaluru soon, where I'm based. I'm really looking forward to their presence in Bangalore. It's also going to Mumbai, Hyderabad, and Chennai. As soon as we can finish this podcast, we will see them expanding into these cities. I hope so. It happens that way. So what is OTP? It is an on-demand harvesting company, is it? Let's find out. It connects end consumers to farmers via a community of resellers who handle the last mile delivery of fruits and vegetables. Obviously, it's AI-based and it's AI-based demand prediction. It leverages historical data to procure farm produce. It is a business-to-business consumer platform. It has raised in total 40 million and wants to make farming sustainable. But let's find out if farming is really sustainable in our country. Like I said, I have a past and present to it because my family is part of it. And most of you listening to this podcast would also have the same background. Varun, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Vishal, for having me on the podcast. Look forward to speaking with you today.
I've been trying to do this since the time you won the Your Story Award in 2016, and I was part of Your Story back then, and I was really looking forward to meeting you in person since then, and finally it's happened. Let me start off, okay? Your platform is helping farmers discover prices. It's helping micro entrepreneurs. Farmer producer organizations are part of this, and you're making farming a data-led business. Right? When you say farming and data-led, everybody laughs at you, right? How did you, as an engineer with all that background from the USA, you were also an investor and you're a serial entrepreneur of sorts. Why do farming, Varun?
So, Vishal, this goes back to my experience at Grofers. See, I was the chief technology officer there. And the interesting thing at Grofers was that, in the business at the time, fruits and vegetables was a 2% contributor to the business and a 20% contributor to the complaints. So, naturally that, there was a problem in terms of, the category, what is being grown, what people expect, the wastages that this category sees. So it just seemed like there is so much to do here. And even if, you're able to make a small dent to it, the impact could be massive. And I think, that is what enticed me. See, I had done 2 companies before this and exited them successfully. And, I was really looking at something which would have a massive impact. 2, and, I was not really looking at, a short-term gig. I really wanted something that I could, sink my teeth into for several years, maybe decades. So I think this just, fit right in there.
You're one of those early bird entrants, right? I mean, I keep talking to the fund Omnivore, and they keep telling me that when they started, right, nobody was interested in Indian agriculture.
Correct.
They would laugh at you saying that why invest in farming or farmers at all? And then there were this whole bunch of IoT companies that came in and tried to change farming, and it was a struggle for them too.
Correct.
I don't see many success stories.
Correct.
So you spoke about, I'm glad you said that you were completely involved in this. You had nothing else to do. You had done everything in the past. I mean, engineer, successful co-founder of a couple of companies. What were some of the problems? You yourself are not a farmer. Did you have a farming background, at least from a family sense, to start this?
I'm not, I don't come from a farming background. But see, when I left Grofers, I spent a lot of time at the farms. And, that is when I would say a lot of, realizations came as the conversations happened. But the good part was that I had a good sense of what the consumer want, because see, that is something that I did while grofers and even in my previous startup. So there was a good sense of, what consumers want. And I had I come from a technology background, so I know what technology can solve for. And when I spent time at the farm gate, all the pieces of the puzzle, I could see that, there is an opportunity. And Vishal, the one thing which, I've also, I would say, observed or seen in life is that, some of the biggest innovations come when two streams which are like, you know, like light years apart or, miles apart, right? They kind of come together. So that is when you really see some, big innovations come. So I think this could just be one of those.
And what are those two things? Are you talking about, the growth of mobile phones and technology in terms of, telecommunications and data, and then, matching the financial side of it? Is that what you're talking about? Or what are the two spectrums that are coming together?
See, in this case, I think there are multiple aspects to it. Uh, I have visualizations of, like, for example, in India, there is this, we often hear stories about how tomato in a particular region is going waste, right? And fundamentally, it's just that there's a huge demand and supply gap. So typically what would happen is that farmers in a particular area would, grow a lot more than what the demand is, and then eventually there are no takers. And even if as a farmer you time it right, so for example, instead of timing your produce right at the time when it is peak season, if you time it a little early or maybe a little late, then the price that you can earn can actually be, manifold. So the point I'm trying to make is that this is just one example of, just how matching demand supply can solve for this. There are other examples which we are doing at OTP, specifically in terms of reducing wastages. So just if you look at this category sees 40%, 50% sometimes in wastages. This is the amount of wastage we see in this category, right? And a lot of it is that across the chain, you have aggregators, you have your folks in the mandi, you have your retailers, and there is little wastage that is accumulating at each point. And one thing that we have done at OTP is use technology and prediction to solve for this. Now, so this is, like I said, this is just one aspect of it. Now, if you go on to the growing side of it, then there is, growing in controlled environments, agronomy. Just, I'll give you a simple example. Just in Delhi, the price of broccoli in winters is 30 rupees a kg and in summers is 300 rupees a kg. Now, the fundamental reason behind this is that the summer climate is such that growing broccoli is not possible. So you grow it, in the hilly areas, and then you fly it down and the cost becomes prohibitively high. But if you're able to solve for this problem, maybe grow in a controlled environment, then actually you solve for a big problem. So that is, now this is an agronomy problem. But what I'm saying is that there are multiple, I would say, opportunities with technology and agri coming together where multiple problems can be solved. We are just attacking one of them.
Yeah, how did you attack this problem? I mean, you started off with B2B. A lot of people would not know that, because OTP is quite popular now. Doing the B2B business was very important for you. Why? Is that because you wanted to understand the problems in the distribution at that point of time?
See, when we started B2B, see, you're trying to solve farm to folk. Now, getting farmers, getting them all together and then getting consumers all together, it's a tough problem, right? Because farmers grow in tons, right? And consumer consume grams, 100 grams, 500 grams. Now, a farmer wouldn't want to talk to you unless the load is significant enough for him to justify. So for us, the challenge was that we were very small at the time, and we said ki, this supply chain is so massive and so big that as a small company with a few people, we don't think we can solve it all. Now, along the way, while we were doing B2B, so we served hotels, restaurants, we served brick and mortar retailers, we served online retailers, we served mom and pop shops also. So and I would say each category came with a learning. Um, And I would say if I just summarize the 2 or 3 things which made us or which made us move from B2B to B2C. So my learning is that in the agri business, the bigger margins are either on the growing side or on the retailing side. In the middle, the margins are relatively smaller. But if I talk about farm to fork, the margins can be as high as 60-70%. So there's no dearth of margins. It's a high margin category. B2B kind of shrinks it down. So that was one challenge we were constantly constrained with. Second was that, when you're serving businesses, then there are challenges of, cash flow, working capital cycles. Farmers expect immediate payments. When you serve hotels, restaurants, caterers, they would like to pay in 45 days. And then you have a business which is, the more it grows, the more capital you need. And, that was not a situation which, I really wanted to be in for a long duration of time. So that was the second challenge. So working capital was a challenge, margins was a challenge. So I would say these were some 2 or 3 things which we felt, or I felt, at least during the B2B part of our journey. And when we moved on to B2C, we immediately solved for these things. So from the consumer, we take upfront payments. This allows us to pay farmers sooner. And farmers really like to work with us then, because we are able to pay them like, we normally have a payment cycle of 10-12 days odd. But if a farmer requests for an immediate payment, we make immediate payment. So, we are able to do that. Then, secondly, the margins which we were struggling from, I would say, from 7% to 12%, when we moved on to consumer, they moved to like 35%, 40%. So that was a big jump. And then the wastage part of it, while the wastage we saw earlier was in the 5-6% neighborhood, and now we are at 4%, 3 to 4%. But if you look at the context, right, if I'm sitting on 12% margin and I have 5% wastage, that is a lot. But if I'm sitting on 40% margin and I have 4% wastage, that is awesome. So that is a great situation to be in. So these were some of the things that we solved for as we moved from B2B to consumer play with OTP.
Fantastic. I want to talk to you about that wastage part that you also brought in, the value loss. Many years ago, I read a report from ENY which said that the value loss, in the supply chain is 35%. Is that value by money they're talking, or value by nutrition? I don't know. Right? Is the loss so high in the farm to fork connect? And has that reduced over time? Because I'm not privy to recent data because there's no survey as such. Based on your experience, what's the farm to fork wastage value-wise and in terms of nutrition-wise? Is that true at all, or do we need to find a new way of measuring that in India?
See, I think value-wise, the number 35-40%, in my experience, I think that is pretty accurate. The reason we call it value loss is, Vishal, that often at times what happens is that let's say if I'm a small and medium retailer, I have a shop and I sell fruits and vegetables, then whatever I'm able to sell during the day and whatever is left over, I know for a fact, like for example, commodities like spinach, etc., they are not going to last the following day. So if I don't sell it today, then I'm not going to be able to sell it tomorrow for sure. So what that means is that I need to somehow discard it and make whatever much I can out of it. Now, one thing could be that if I'm let's say a family that is running this shop, then I could probably consume it myself also, right? In which case the value is kind of zero, but not necessarily zero, because if as a family I would have bought it from elsewhere, I would have paid something, right? But so that is, I would say, some way of value savings. The other way to look at it is that some of such shops, they tie up with the dhaba walas, and they'll say ki you take it for a very, very low price. At my end, I'm going to, otherwise it's going to become of zero value to me. So essentially, this is why people talk of it in terms of value loss. But I would say nutrition loss is saved to some degree, but value loss continues to be in the 35 to 40% neighborhood. So I think that number is accurate.
Okay, fantastic. And in your experience, now that you're connecting, you're able to pay farmers fast, consumers get their produce on time, and therefore that connect, it's early days, of course, for you. What have been the learnings for you in terms of time to market? Let's see if there's something called time to market for farmers, right? It's seasonal. they're growing. I mean, with you, perhaps they're doing a multi-cropping pattern, right? So
Correct.
let's look at everything about OTP now. Seeds, soil, supply chain, selling discovery obviously is the problem the farmers face. You've now bridged the gap with micro entrepreneurs. Can you explain the entire chain and how it works? And therefore, you can reduce this value loss, maybe perhaps. And how are the intermediary are these guys the new intermediaries, the micro entrepreneurs that you've got them involved today? They're not distributors, but they're sellers. So if you can explain how the entire process works, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, see, I just give you a sense of the scale today. Vishal, see, we move about 110, 120 tons in Delhi NCR every day across, I would say, about 18 to 20,000 consumers we serve every day. And we are also live in Mumbai now. So in Mumbai, we do about 2,000, 2,500 consumers we serve every day. And that is about, I would say, 10, 12 tons or roughly. That is how much we move. And so on a single day, from the farms, we have combining the three warehouses we have. We have one in Gurgaon, one in Noida, and then one in the Mumbai area. So all of these combined, they're about, I don't know, maybe anywhere from 80 to 100 inbound vehicles that come, and then maybe 150 to 180 outbound vehicles that go every day. And overnight operations, approximately, I would say, combined about 700 to 800 people total working across all of these warehouses. So it's a pretty intense operations, if you just imagine. And if I talk about the community leaders or the resellers, so that would be around, I would say, another 600 plus, maybe another 100, 150 in Mumbai. So about 700, 750 resellers who in turn serve about 30 consumers on an average each. So that is the scale, and the good or the bad part about this is that because it is perishable, you can't stock. It comes every day and it goes every day. There is you run into problems with traffic, you run into problems with weather, right? So all of this is a part of life. Now, how we try to simplify this complex world for us. So one is that we, at the onset, we do some season level planning. So you can think of it as, when like winters is approaching. So we know that, in winters, if I talk about Delhi, you have the leafies are very popular, like methi, sarson, bathua, all of that. And then, so the winter crops kind of start. And so ahead of the season, we will have a sense of how much we expect to be consuming every day. And we will, I would say, with the set of farmers that we work, we will agree on the rough quantum, daily quantum. They might decide that they have, let's say, a 2-acre piece of land. They'll divide it into, let's say 7 parts. And, every day of the week, there's, if it is spinach, then, they are cutting one part of it one day and then moving on to the next. And then, by the time they come back to the 7th, it is ready for further harvest. So these are some of the things that would happen ahead of the season. The pricing discussion happens daily with the farmers because this commodity is very volatile. The price fluctuates every day. So you agree on the price every day, and you have a few farm belts that you procure from because you want to make sure that you have sufficient backups. So, for example, when we had the farmers protest in NCR, the whole highway, which we call GT Canal Road, from Delhi, Sonipat, all the way to Panipat was clogged. So there was no traffic that was moving. So that was a disruption at the time. And then, your regions of Rajasthan, UP, they kind of kicked in and fulfilled some of that demand. So you keep some level of backups. And the system involves daily prediction. So we predict every day how much we are going to sell the following day. And the farmers are notified accordingly. As much tons of produce, I would say, enters the warehouses, and then it is the packing operation starts. So packing is, from the farm, you would get tons of X of spinach, and then you would bundle it into 500 gram units. So that happens. Approximately out of the 20,000 odd orders, we have about 7 to 8 items per order that we serve. So that is the average consumer, how much they buy from us. And so the packing operation starts then at night around 9-10 p.m. The picking operation starts, which lasts all the way through 4 a.m. So by 4 a.m., the whole picking, order wise, bagging of the orders, and then dispatching it from the warehouse. So all of that is done by 4 a.m. in the morning. So it's an overnight operations, very intense. And then between, I would say, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., the deliveries to the various community leaders happen. And the community leaders take about 1 to 2 hours, and by 7-8 a.m., they are done with their last mile deliveries to consumers. Now, you can obviously say that, in terms of middlemen, we have eliminated some and we have added some. But I would say broadly, see, from the farm all the way to the warehouse, and then the packing, picking operation at the warehouse, and then the reseller. So if you look at it in term and compare it vis-a-vis the conventional supply chain, we have reduced the intermediaries quite a bit. But the one thing that we have done, Vishal, is that no intermediary stocks. So that is the beauty. Because at our warehouse also, it is, coming, it's packing, it's going to the pick, it's moving out. So if you look at our warehouse in the morning, there's literally nothing in there, it's all done. So even if you look at our community leaders, they'll get the stuff within 1 2 hours, they'll be done with the dispersal. And I think that is what is needed in a fresh produce supply chain. It is almost like a relay race where you have to hand off the baton as quickly as possible, because if you stock it, it's going to start decaying, right?
I agree with you completely. And would you tell me that as a consumer, do I pre-order this, or I get a message from the resellers saying that tomorrow's crop is so and so, book a few kgs if you want, or book a few grams? Is that how it works?
So from a consumer standpoint, the expectation is that you order by 11:30 p.m. and you receive it in the morning by 7 a.m. or you will get it. So all the pre-planning prediction is something that we do internally. We don't pass that on to the consumers. So from their
I
standpoint,
like
they
this.
order by 11:30 p.m., they'll get it the next day
Okay.
morning.
There's a lot of talk around people who say that grow your own vegetables, own a piece of the farm. For me, that's very difficult to understand for a consumer. I don't want to own a piece of farm. I want just fresh food for my children and family on a daily basis. So that's better. What are your thoughts on these various models cropping in the farming side of things, where people say own a piece of a farm, buy produce, and then people can block their produce or sell their produce in a mandi maybe? Is that too complicated for a consumer?
I mean, if you ask me, I think it is. I mean, it's a cool thing to do, but I don't think it's very functional, because see, these items are day-to-day needs. You just need it, and you want to cook and then consume. So um, I think it's some people would do it just out of, I would say, a hobby, or just try something
Yeah.
out. But I don't see that these will hit scale. The one thing that I see, although, is that often people try to pitch this as a thought, because there is a lot of mistrust around the produce, right? So you the kind of questions that come to your mind is that what fertilizer did he use, what pesticides did he use, did he grow it in the right soil or not, what am I consuming? So I think solving it through this way, it's from a consumer standpoint, it's not the most optimal solution. I mean, you solve for one thing, but then you're creating so many other hassles. So I think the right solution would be something where the consumer convenience is not compromised, but yet you're able to solve for the trust issue. So I think that would be a right solution that would hit scale.
Okay. The key part is perishable, and the other key word is local. And I'm sure with the model that you've evolved now, can be as local to, Bangalore and its region, maybe few
Correct.
cities in Karnataka, and probably Chennai, probably Bombay. It'll all carry local flavors, right? That's what you're planning the system to be, right?
Yeah. So it is, I would say, see, there is a very local element to it, Vishal, because in all of these cities that you live, so for example, you're in Bangalore, you talk about Mumbai, you talk about Delhi. I even see that some of the producers also very different. Like some of the items that people in Mumbai, for example, consume. I'll just give you a simple example, right? So there is a kind of a small brinjal in Mumbai that people consume, which has like white stripes on it. So that you don't get in Delhi, and people in Delhi don't consume that as much because it was never grown, so no one ever consumed.
And the carrots in Bangalore aren't sweet. That's the first thing I hear from the Delhi guys.
Yeah, so that's another thing. Then out here, for example, in the winter season, we get a lot of red carrots. So that you won't see as prevalent down in the south. So I would say there is always going to be a local element to the business. But at the same time, there are going to be certain elements which are non-local as well. For example, imported produce, right? So, you can kiwis. So 90% of the kiwis that we consume are all imported. They would come from Iran or they would come from New Zealand. So overall, from a consumer standpoint, it is a combination of local produce, some India level produce as well. Like onion is a primarily a Nasik commodity in Maharashtra, and that serves Bangalore, that serves Mumbai, that serves Delhi. So we get our onions from there as well, and then some of it is imported. So it's a mix, but local is definitely an important part of the overall of thing.
Okay, do farmers appreciate this kind of data-led approach? I'm thinking of this because the next 10 years, I think a new generation of farmers approaching. I think thanks to smartphones, UPI being ever present there now. Do you see this changing their attitudes towards farming, saying that, look, I can now look at larger cities as a business? And the reason I also ask you this is regulations changing. A lot of the states passed regulations where people like you can go source directly. The APMC Acts locally have all been amended. What are some of the changes that you see that will make farmers appreciate this kind of an approach?
See, I think there are a few things happening. So one is that, a lot of people that I know, or the newer generation of the farmers, right? They have more access to information and they want to do things differently. So that is one thing that we are seeing. Now, see, broadly, you can define or segregate farmers into two groups. See, one is who are who are barely able to make ends meet, right? So from them, I don't think we should expect too much because they already have a big, I would say, burden on them, which is just to make ends meet, right? Now, these are the farmers who want to try different things and I would say make a break. So I'll give you, simple examples. So out here in Delhi, there was an ex-army person who started growing orange carrot. Earlier in Delhi, we used to only get red carrot in winters, and then summers you would not get carrot, or it would maybe fly down from Himachal, very small quantities. And then this person that I'm talking about, he started growing orange carrots. And the good part about orange carrots is that you can store them in cold stores. So he would grow them in the winters alongside the red carrots, and then he would store them in cold storages. And then suddenly now orange carrot is available in Delhi throughout the summer season as well, right? So coming to my point, that this was an innovation that happened which allowed people in this part of the country access to carrots, maybe not red, but at least carrots you would get throughout the year. So coming to your question is that there are what we see today is that there is group of farmers who want to try out different things which can fetch them higher margins. From a data standpoint, they are very open to it. So they will ask us things like how does the price of a particular commodity, how did that vary over the course of the season? And they would like to catch that window when the price was high so that they can maximize their income. So we see farmers talk about that. So overall, I would say, data and, the newer progressive farmers trying to do different things, I would say that is a phenomena which is, increasingly getting more and more popular.
Okay, discovery of these resellers, very important to me. What is their profile? Are they educated, or are they Kirana stores coming into buying farm produce and then selling? What's the profile and what's the age group of these people? Are these new age entrepreneurs of sorts, educated and trying this out? And is it a franchise kind of model? How does this work?
See, this is primarily, small businessmen. So think of it as, if it's a lady, she could be running a parlor or a boutique. She could be a home chef. If it is a male, he could be, let's say, running a small electronics store, or he could be running a real estate outlet. He could be a broker, for example. The common thing for all of them is that they have one or two helpers who help them in their business. As we say, ladke rakhe hue hote hain. And their business usually doesn't start before 9 a.m., 10 a.m. So that is when the business starts. So our pitch to them is that, look, you have idle infrastructure and you have idle manpower that you can use for 1 or 2 hours in the morning and make additional money without impacting your regular business. So that, you don't, if there is rain, there is adequate cover for it. And then within 1 2 hours, they're able to distribute the produce in their area. So that is the profile. And on an average, community leader who works with us makes anywhere from, I would say, 12,000 to 15,000 rupees a month in top-up income.
This top-up income is very good for these small businessmen. I'm sure. But what is can they do this full-time also?
It is not a full-time thing, Vishal. It's just a 2-hour thing in the morning. See,
Fantastic.
that's how the program has been designed. We don't expect anyone to be doing this full-time. It is an additional source of income.
And hence it's scalable. You're basically saying anybody, it's like what, the e-commerce companies are doing, right? If you have a Kirana store, you also sell, distribute, or, what is that? Home delivery of products or something that the e-commerce guys do.
Correct.
So I'm glad that you've been able to replicate this with agri-produce. But do they follow your processes to the T? That, the way the packaging arrives or the way something has to be delivered without being damaged, do they understand that?
So, I would say the way to think of it is that, this is an unorganized market, and you have to, I would say, tame it to a degree, right? It's not easy, but it is possible. So we are doing it, and we use a lot of technology to do it, actually, Vishal. There is a lot of tracking that happens in terms of the last mile deliveries that they do. We have pictures of every last mile delivery, the times, everything. So there's a lot of, like I said, we use a lot of technology and data to basically monitor what is happening, and then align the incentives also uh, for these people accordingly. So there is a lot of alignment that we do. So it is not an easy problem. It's a tough problem.
I'm
But
glad
yeah,
you're
it's
candid there. I'm glad you're candid because customer service is very important. And I hope people listening to this, young people, who want to be resellers, customer service is very important. And I would recommend you to follow the processes, right? I'm glad you touched upon these subjects. We've covered OTP in general. I generally wanted thoughts about, are you happy with government regulations when it comes to farming? When I see India's opportunity, the last 7 years, I've seen an explosion of brands. I've seen consumption go up. We talk about retail being $1 trillion economy. It's a fantastic time for Indians, right? What are the good things that you've seen from a regulatory perspective as a startup founder? What are some of the things that we could do better, perhaps, from an agri-tech space when it comes from the government?
See, I think in general, I think the government is very pro about having agri and industry, everyone work together. So, and this shows in, I would say the laws that the government tried to push through, the last year odd. Now, it didn't pan out exactly as the government had wanted, but at least you can say that they're headed in that direction. So I would say from the government, what we see is that they're headed in the right direction. There are efforts also. So, for example, just last month I met, um, I guess, one of the officers here in the context of the Enam portal and getting us plugged into it. We have had multiple meetings, even with the horticulture head of Haryana, and now also Punjab very soon. So, so there is I would say the direction is right. The efforts are also there. But having said that, with the government, the challenge often at times is that the intent is there, the budgets are there, but then even then getting it right is a problem. Like for example, the government has a lot of capital that have allotted for FPOs, right, to get farmer producer organizations, getting them to work with companies. But when those funds are actually allotted and you go out and review, then you see that the expected outcome is not necessarily happening all the time. So like I said, the efforts are there, the initiatives are there. Not all initiatives are making the kind of headway that the government would probably want, but the intent is right. The efforts are there.
Great answer. I mean, horticulture for me is very big, right? India, I think, I don't know what the market size, I can't think offhand at this point of time, but India consumes most of its fruits and vegetables, right? We don't.
India is, this is 150 billion almost, Vishal, fruits and vegetables. Yeah,
Why haven't we created a large export market of it? I mean, I'm with people like you being around and the data being available, and I'm certainly sure that we can increase yields. We can also create exports, right, for horticulture produce. Do you see that as a bottleneck still? Are there bottlenecks? Is that because of the yield? Is that because of the yield that we get in this country, or it's just because it's consumed, everything is consumed here, so it's enough?
I don't think it's because of the yield so much. See, in India, half of the population is engaged in agriculture. And trust me, if a farmer knows that there's an opportunity and he can export something, oh, he will do it for sure. There's no doubt about it. So these are all entrepreneurs, right? Farmers are entrepreneurs. They invest in their business, they grow, and then they get revenue. So they're all businessmen. I think there are a few elements to it. So one is that a lot of the quality restrictions that a lot of the other countries have in terms of importing produce. I think somewhere we fall short in some of them, and wherever we have tried to address it, we have done good. Like I was mentioning, pomegranates, even grapes actually. So grapes is also quite a bit of the grapes are also exported, where the quantities of pesticides, fertilizers, etc. Residue levels are all measured, and if they fall within the range, then the countries would accept it for sure. So I would say that is one challenge where either it is a know-how issue or it is just that lots of small farmers growing these things, and we don't really have a way to control that the quality is, or the inputs are being given in that controlled a fashion. So
Makes sense
I
what
think
you
these
say.
are some of the challenges that are there. The other thing is that the export market is also very volatile. So when I say volatile, there are times when, for example, if you talk about apple as a commodity, right? So Italy would be doing apple, then New Zealand would be doing apple, and then we have Indian apples as well. So if you want to really export, you need to make sure that you're timing it right.
Absolutely, absolutely, Varun. I mean, I think you highlighted the issues that will perhaps change. Do you think something will change in the next 5 years? I like the fact that you mentioned that it's not a yield issue. It's a problem of the multiple holdings that we have, multiple farms, right? It's a small farm holdings that we have in our country. It's good because people have livelihood, but it's also smaller, so they serve only local regions. I want you to touch upon policy there quickly. Do you think we need large farms? Do you think there should be farmer entrepreneurs who will aggregate land, minus the land play, and make sure that they do multi-cropping in these large tracts of land, individual entrepreneurs? They had also tried something similar in the fire plans, just after independence, as cooperatives, right, which still exist even today in many ways. And nowadays people are trying to say that, okay, there's capital available today. Let's get the FPOs are just that, I think, right? Get everyone together and let's see what happens. Do you see that
Correct.
changing in terms of land use, like a self-help group or a joint liability group, and people get together and say, let's come together for a common cause and increase revenues? In fact, in Europe, if you remember, 100 years ago, a lot of the big retailers are actually a conglomerate of farmer producer organizations, right? So do you see that happening here?
Yeah, let's see. See, my thing is that this is happening for sure. There are lots of efforts, but see, we have to realize that India is a big country. It takes longer, for things to move as quickly. But um, I think there could be more innovative ways to also think through this. So one other thing in India is that, see, we have a lot of people in our country that are engaged in farming. So if you just say that I'll acquire your land, I'll grow it for you, I'll give you the money, then but they still have to do something. So that is another problem that you need to attack when doing consolidation. And I would say some initiatives address that part as well. So there are initiatives that are happening. I think they'll only accelerate in the times to come. Maybe there is a way to make them accelerate even faster. So I think probably there's an opportunity there.
All right. In terms of finance itself, the government wants to build a agri-stack and connect, the financial ecosystem to the agri-stack. At least that's the thought process at the NITI Aayog, right? Is financing a good option to be in for you, whereas you can offer finance to resellers, finance to farmers, because there's so many inputs that you provide also, or are you just saying you'll build that agri-stack platform where any partner can come and plug in?
So see, this part of it we need to still get into, but the kind of headways that we made, honestly speaking, Vishal, was that like I said, we normally pay in 10 days, 12 days, but then when there is a financing need for a farmer, we would pay in like a day. We would do that also. The reason we are able to do it because we are prepaid. We already have the cash sitting with us, so it's not a problem. But having said that, in the long run, these are opportunities that I think exist. I think farmers do have a need, like when they're harvesting, you need to plan for the next crop. You need to buy the seeds. You need to buy a lot of the inputs upfront, and you need cash at the time. While you may not have, I would say, sold off all your previous crop that is being, or the crop that is currently in the farm. So I think there are opportunities there. I think at some point we will go deeper along that direction as well. We are not so deep in that yet. But yeah, why not? There is an opportunity.
Okay. On leadership itself, coming down to the last few questions, I want to ask you, being a techie, working abroad, coming in, running pure tech businesses, obviously running one company that's operationally intensive. And when you do farming, it is so operationally intensive that it can throw you off. I
Very much.
wanted to talk about your leadership style in that case. What helped you? What kept you alive? Was it a good team? Was it a bunch of mentors? Was it you spending time with people who understood farming better, hiring the right people who knew farming in the right sense, rather than you're playing a long game rather than a short game. So I
Correct.
want to know, how did you manage your leadership?
So one thing that helped me, Vishal, was that I've done 2 startups before this. So, that helps. I've dealt with a lot of people management issues and, not being able to personally manage people very well in my prior startup. So that is something that I've seen. So out here, the way I kind of see it is that, um, one thing is that we have people, in the company who were with me even at my prior startups. So, a lot of people who are a part of this journey have, not only worked with me at Grow Farm and now OTP, but have worked with me in my prior startups as well. So, these things help because, there's like an understanding that you develop. And, a lot of times it happens that even before you say, this is what I want, people know what I'm going to say and they'll jump on it. So that, so that helps. So having, I would say, people stick around for longer, uh, with you, that I think that helps. The second thing also is that I feel that, the team and everyone needs to come with that mindset. And, in my case, I did tell them that, look, don't think of it as, it's a quick exit and, we'll kind of, so think of it as a long-term thing. And I think between the whole team, everyone comes with that mindset. And I think, real value is also created over the long term, Vishal. It's not, if you try to do something in 1-2 years, then, fundamentally, I think 1-2 years is too small a time to really create as much value. And what I tell our team is that, as we sail through this, right, the business will go through many things. There'll be, funding crunches, there'll be COVID situations, there'll be, bigger empires trying to, eat into your share. So
Or
we will
copy you. Yeah.
we'll go through all kinds of ups and downs, right? So I think it is most important that the team kind of be agile and act as per the needs of the situation. So, and by and large, I'm a big believer in Darwin's theory that the species that lasts the longest is the one that evolves the fastest. So broadly, that is what I tell our team as well, and I think so far it has worked pretty okay.
And I think Agritech has its time has, I believe its time has come, right? And you
I
see
think
that
so.
in the news as well. And I'm sure that a
Sure.
lot of the one thing that disappoints me is a lot of the large agri companies that have offices in India, right? They act as sales officers and don't understand technology. I mean, that's a grouse of mine. A lot of international seeds companies are here. A lot of the labs, chemical
Yeah.
companies are here. I would recommend some of them to check out our startups, So what are some of the thoughts about future of agri-tech over the next 3 years? Positive outlook, of course, but what would move the needle to bigger investments? I'm not looking for unicorns. I'm looking at more consumers participating, more businesses participating with startups. Is that going to take off in a big way?
See, I think if I look at the last year or so, I think the funding in agri-tech has increased quite a bit. So I think that is a good sign. Uh, and let's see how it continues with the current economic situation and as we move out of it. But I think broadly, my view on this, Vishal, is that uh, even if we have like 1 or 2 successes, right, I think that'll pave the way for a lot of future investment that will come. Like, for example, when the Flipkart Walmart deal was happening, right? So that was very important for the startup ecosystem, because had that not happened and Flipkart, had taken a huge amount of
Yeah,
capital and
I
the largest
agree with you.
capital at
I
the time,
agree with
right?
you.
But that success then fueled so many other, companies and, entrepreneurs. So I think, in agri-tech, there is inflow that is coming. There's a good set of agri-tech startups. I think the other interactions have also started. So that is also good.
I think the time of agri-tech startups has come, and I see a lot of automation happening too. Uh, and if there's one thing that you've learned from agriculture, what is it?
Well, one thing I know for sure is that agriculture requires a lot of patience. So, like for example, right, now if you're in the potato, ecosystem, and let's say, you're trying, maybe a specific variety of potatoes, seeing how it sells and so on. So essentially what you're looking at is that, get one cycle right. And if you miss that cycle, for whatever reason, right, you lose 1 year. So, and compare that with software cycles now, like you make an update to your web portal and you realize something is wrong, 2-3 days you fix it. So, yeah,
I
so
get the analogy.
it's like the spectrum is so wide. So you really have to, learn patience and, figure out your way through it.
Okay. My last two questions are simple questions, and books, pieces of art, movies that inspired you, Varun, at this point of time, or even through your life. What's kept you inspired? And finally, guide to happiness in few seconds.
Well, see, I think different books have different, um, the whole different values at various points in time. When I was starting, I read Zero to One. That's a good book when you're starting out. Then, as you kind of your companies mature, you move from, good to great, and then you talk about Innovator's Dilemma. So these are some of the books that I've read. I read a lot of biographies as well. Like, I've
What's your favorite? Give us one biography that you've liked.
actually, all are very interesting. So I've read Steve Jobs' biography by Isaacson. I've read Elon Musk's biography. I think I've read Jeff Bezos's also. I've read some of the the yesteryear, like Lee Iacocca, who was the
Ford
Ford
sales guy, marketing and
Chrysler,
sales. Yeah.
yeah. So, all of them come with a good set of learning. So
Interesting. One thing that you take away from all these guys is what they're very disciplined towards processes. Not so much Musk now. It looks very different when you see Twitter and what's happening. But interestingly, you mentioned some great names there. All of them are great names. Is it the hustle that makes them realistic, or is it the product that they're focused on? That I think it's the latter, right, rather than the former.
So I think that, see, so the way I look at it is, Vishal, is that, see, I see, a lot of different traits. I don't think it is one particular trait that defines, how you will go. But I would say there are different traits that have made, these entrepreneurs successful in different ways. The way I look at it is that I normally see that, given my situation, what trait would help me navigate through this, and I fit the pieces of the puzzle accordingly. So that is what I do. So that's my way of.
No, that's fantastically said. You learn from the guys who've already done it and you fit it into it's like music. I agree. I mean, learn from the best musicians and put your whole style to it. Amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Varun Khurana, of course, the founder of Otipy. Download that app if you're in Delhi NCR region. Obviously, you can check them out. Even otherwise, just download and check out their app. I would suggest visit the website too. Varun, final thoughts. When are you coming to Bangalore as Otipy?
Oh, we'll be there next year.
That's great. Guys, look out for him, okay? Look out for the company. Thank you so much, Varun. We'll see you soon.
Thank you, Vishal. Thank you for having me.